Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stock. I'm your host, and I am so glad that you are here today for this conversation. This is one that you may be thinking about for a while afterwards, and it may be several years before this conversation comes up again in your life. But it's a very, very important conversation. First of all, I want to say thank you to Katie Daniels for several different things, for introducing me to our next guest, Martha Spruce. I also want to thank Katie for her incredible ability to take my thoughts and concepts about jewelry and put them into the necklace and earrings, and just so thankful for her incredible gifts that she shares so generously. In this vein of gratitude, I also want to thank Lamano Art and their new product called theartofforgiving.com. It's just an incredible course, along with Katie Ingersoll, a dear friend who is supporting the work that we are doing here, and the Stegner family. So in this space, I just want to share with you as a little bit of a foundational piece. We're going to be talking about death with dignity. And when I was first exposed to this idea of how many things in my life are finishing up their cycle in a day or less than a day, it really made me go for walks barefoot in the backyard. It made me really stop and think about some things. One of those things is being that at the end of the day, when the sun sets, the day is over. It's complete. It's done. And so we carry with us the wisdom that we learned from that, but that day is finished. And then we move into another season of the night. Same thing with actual seasons, that those are lasting longer, right? Up to 3 months or so. And in that space, when it's done, I can recall and feel in my body the energy of spring in the middle of winter. But unless I actually go to where there is spring, I'm not going to be experiencing that in that space. And then another thing, I've loved to have candles with me so often. Have candles burning. Perhaps it's from growing up in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where electricity was kind of an iffy thing sometimes. And then when we blow it out, it's extinguished. The light is done. And yet I'm not shedding tears for that. I am grateful for the light that I had. I'm grateful um, that I'm able to say thank you for that. And so in this conversation, I just invite you to open up your heart and to listen a little bit differently as we talk about this incredible conversation topic. And here is our favorite Martha Spruce. If you didn't listen to our first interview about Reiki, I invite you to go back and find that and listen to it. Martha, it's such a delight to have you here. And thank you for wanting to talk about this conversation that so many of us want to say, oh no, we're not going to talk about that. Thank you, friend.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me back. I'm loving talking with you, and I'm loving being able to connect with your audience about such an important topic.
I would love for you to share, and knowing in America that every single state handles this differently, and knowing that countries handle it differently as well, would love for you to share what death with dignity is, and then what your experiences are, how it is in the particular state that you live in. And then later on, we'll get to your experiences.
That sounds like a lovely way to start. Thank you, Sarah. Um, I'm a hospice volunteer as well as being a Reiki teacher, and I've had the great privilege of sitting with people as they were dying. Um, I think of it as an honor. It's a great passage, and it's a passage into the unknown. None of us know what comes next. One thing that I have become acutely aware of when I sit with people who are dying is that often they're suffering. There's physical pain. Sometimes there's a lot of fear, or other types of emotional pain. One thing that has really impressed me with its potential to reduce fear and great physical suffering is the law, which is new in many states in the United States and is in various countries around the world. And it's a law called Death with Dignity. Um, and this means that people who are of sound mind, who are within 6 months of an expected death from a terminal disease, choose to end their suffering sooner.
Mm.
This is something that I think is humane. It is only chosen by the person that is suffering, not by their physician, not by their families. Um, and it's a very personal, spiritual decision, I believe. It's not arrived at lightly. And there's many questions that arise for individuals. And some of you that are listening may have many questions yourselves.
Mhm.
How could a person choose death over life?
Mm.
And I'd like to explore that a little bit later on. But first, I'd like to give kind of an overview of what the law is in my state. And keep in mind that this may be quite different where you live. If you're interested for personal reasons in exploring death with dignity, find out what is legal in your area, whether you're listening in another state or in another country. The law is quite different depending on where you live. Currently, uh, death with dignity or medical aid in dying is legal in these states that I know of in the United States. Here in Maine, where I live, also in Oregon,
Mhm.
Washington, Montana, Vermont, California, Colorado, the District of Columbia, um, New Jersey, Maine,
Mm.
New Mexico,
Mm.
and Hawaii.
Mm.
Death with dignity or medical aid in dying has been called by other names. And I think it's really important to point out appropriate terminology.
Mm.
I talk about death with dignity, I really want to emphasize the dignity part. When some people talk about this concept of easing suffering at the end of a terminal disease, they may call it euthanasia. They may call it assisted suicide.
Mm.
I don't think that those terms are respectful of the process. I
Mm.
think it should be discarded. And this is the general attitude that I found is true for those that are choosing death with dignity.
Mm.
They really want to emphasize their own choice and their own dignity.
Mm.
So I'd just like to add in that piece about appropriate terminology.
Mhm.
Um, Most of the people who choose death with dignity are cancer patients.
Right.
Oftentimes, and I believe that this is in the literature, 72% of those who
Mhm.
choose death with dignity nationwide are afflicted with terminal cancer. Uh, Most people are elderly. The median age for this choice is 75. Of
Mhm.
course, some young people, some much older people. Um, Most are white people.
Mm.
Most are well educated. Most have been in some type of hospice care.
Mhm.
And perhaps these things are have many reasons, but I'm just giving you the statistics. I'm
Mhm.
going to venture into the whys of those statistics. I don't know. Um, Many people have neurological diseases in addition to cancer, other diseases that are often associated with death
Mm.
with dignity are people who have been diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease,
Mhm.
and Parkinson's. If cognition is affected, if they are not able to make an informed decision for themselves,
Mhm.
those patients cannot legally choose death with dignity.
Correct.
And there recently, I think, was a bill up in Canada to debate that part of
Mm.
death with dignity. Many, many people with beginning Alzheimer's have been legally determined to be not in a place where they can make that decision. And yet, many, many people with Alzheimer's are aware that they have Alzheimer's. So
Mm.
it's a very controversial topic. Um, Other um, And one other term that I just want to add in the inappropriate technology, some people have said that death with dignity is mercy killing, and I especially
Mm,
this term. Um, I don't feel that it's killing in any way. I think that a person
mm,
has chosen to go sooner than
mm,
they would if they did not choose death with dignity. But we are all on a date with death, all of us.
mm,
There is such an incredible amount of denial in this culture about death
mm,
that for some people they may want to turn off this video. I urge you to stay with it, even if it's a little uncomfortable for you.
mm.
Something that our culture doesn't like to acknowledge is that we're here on this earth temporarily. What comes next, we just don't know.
Mm.
I hope that for some of you, faith provides comfort.
Right. Yes.
And I think that that's important for many, many people. What we
Yes.
believe comes after death can provide a great deal of comfort. And yet, it's not a cornerstone of death with dignity. You don't
Mm,
have to have a particular belief to use the death with dignity law.
mm,
Um, what you do need is to have a very specific plan. And
mm.
I'll just go over that plan again. This is true in my state. Person needs to be in touch with a doctor who is participating in
Mhm.
death with dignity, and doctors have a choice to opt out.
Right.
Be in touch with that doctor and talk with them about how you feel. You need to wait 15 days and have a second talk with that doctor.
Right.
You need to make a written request
Mhm.
with two witnesses. Only one of those witnesses can be a relative,
Mhm.
and you can then receive a prescription. There's a 48-hour wait on the prescription. Again, this is here in Maine. Um, and this is after the doctor receives your written request. The prescription is filled by a compounding pharmacy. Now, that's not your local CVS or
Right.
Walgreens. It's a
Right.
compounding pharmacy, and
Yes.
might not be available in your area. It takes some research. So, here where I live, there's a compounding pharmacy in Portland. The reason for that is that there's a number of very strong medications that are
Right.
mixed into this compound, and it needs to be mixed into a liquid when it's ready to be taken. The
Mm.
person needs to be able to drink the liquid themselves. It's
Right.
not a pill, it's not an injection.
Right.
And this is very important. People who have severe swallowing problems
Mm.
to address this with their doctor.
Yeah.
You can a person can also get an anti-vomiting prescription because
Mm.
obviously if they can't keep that
Mm.
medicine down, it's not going to work. Um, so again, day one is a verbal request. Day 15 is a second verbal request. Day 17, the doctor can write the prescription, and then there's that wait period.
Mhm.
Here in Maine, there was a recently passed law. It's called LD 613. It was signed into law and goes into effect on September 18th of this year. And it's an adjustment in the Maine Death with Dignity law.
Mm.
In this adjustment, physicians have their own discretion to waive up to 10 days of that 15-day waiting period.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is that sometimes patients are in rapidly deteriorating conditions and
Mhm.
extreme physical suffering. So the idea of it is to um, give them some help, that they don't have to wait and wait and wait. And sometimes the family is in also an extreme place of suffering, wanting the person who has chosen death with dignity to be honored with their choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's really an important adjustment in the law.
Martha, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to have you share about your personal experiences in this process. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
This is Michelle. She teaches women how to forgive the people who betrayed them, not by asking them to talk about it, but by helping them express it through art. She's an art therapist and the creator of the Art of Forgiving, a class that turns emotion into expression. No therapy jargon, no pressure to explain, because forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about setting yourself free. This is Michelle, and this is the Art of Forgiving.
Are you ready to enrich and deepen your relationship with the spirit world and increase your knowledge of the shamanic journey? Then this is for you. The first step of the shamanic journey is to discover your power animal. This process allows you to step into Spirit's energetic field where they share their aspect of the divine's power. And as a result, you begin to realize the significance of their sacred power and what it means to you personally. Katie Ingersoll is a highly sought shamanic and Reiki teacher, a practitioner, a spiritual counselor, and educator. With grace, she integrates the rich teachings of the wise ancient ones into her workshops, encouraging her students to mesh these teachings into their everyday lives. For details of how you can discover your power animal, reach out to Katie at katieingersoll@gmail.com. You can also find her as a qualified teacher and practitioner on Sandra Ingerman's shamanicteachers.com. Katie Ingersoll's classes and workshops are fresh, unique, fun, and informative. Ready to deepen your shamanic understanding? Reach out today. Oh, this is such an important topic that we are having this conversation, because it's allowing the space for us to talk about how we, if it's a family member, are able to support the people that we love. We don't have to agree with their decision, but having just a little bit of this foundational understanding. I know that my family is grieving right now. I have a cousin, my first cousin, who went into hospice, and it was less than 10 days, and she had transitioned already. And I have an aunt that I went to visit who's 97, and we'd gotten a message that of some concern, and went in to visit her, and she had just gotten out of the hospital, was in assisted care, and the curtains were completely closed. And the entire time that we sat in the room with her, there was a little tiny light that was on. And I know that for the people who were with me during that time, that we were absolutely wiped out energetically, emotionally for the rest of the day. That was on a Monday, and we agreed in the hallway that we'd come back in if she was still living on Friday. We came in on Friday, and the curtains were open, and she was out of hospice and back into palliative care. And so, life is not a straight line, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think that one's faith is really challenged when you have somebody close to you, or you know that somebody is in that process of releasing from this life into the next. I think it's also a very clarifying experience. I know that for myself, that when my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, that there were things that I had believed my whole life. I remember very, very, very clearly putting the pillows back onto a couch and wondering in that moment if everything that I believed was legitimate still for me, and needed to go through that process of just slowly sitting with each of the different pieces, right? As they came forward, sitting with each of those. And so the information that we are sharing today is information. And again, just one more quick story here of somebody who chose this, had the whole family all around, medicine's all ready to drink, and she stops and says, "Wait a minute, I haven't sold my car yet." And so everybody literally, goes back and does the thing. And she sells the car, and they come in for a second time. So it's a space of opportunity for family to be able to talk to each other, to have conversations, to be present if they want to be. One of the greatest blessings of my life was being present and with my father as he was transitioning, knowing there were angels in the room. And I am just so, so deeply grateful for that experience. So again, loss, death, grief is not something that we talk about frequently. But I'd love for you to pick up, Martha, as you were sharing about your personal experiences as a Reiki master, as somebody who works in hospice with this topic.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I really felt honored to be invited by two of my long-term Reiki clients who had become friends. They wanted me to attend their transition.
Mm-hmm.
The first person was a tall man of Norwegian heritage. He had been very active forester, harvesting trees and clearing land. I met him at a death cafe that I was hosting, which I do for a local Jung center here in Brunswick. And at the death cafe, he said, "I was just diagnosed with a glioblastoma in my brain. It seems so foreign to me because I feel so well. I'm working, I'm engaged with life. I have no relationship with this tumor. I'm here to talk about how to develop a relationship with what's coming because it feels foreign to me."
Yes.
And I felt quite honored that he was willing to talk in that, to have that conversation at my death cafe. And the other people attending, this was just before COVID, so it was an in-person death cafe, and they all were very willing to listen, to have him talk and process some of his feelings. So things went on, and in the course of his diagnosis, he realized that he didn't want the ravages of a glioblastoma, which is, I think, the worst form of brain cancer. So he talked with his doctor, he talked with his family. These are very necessary conversations to have.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had a long conversation with himself. He also gave an interview, and I thought this was tremendously courageous. He and his family were all interviewed by a local television station. If you'd like to see that, I think it's available still on the internet. His name, because he shared it widely, I can share it, was Eric, Erik Carlson, Carlson. And you can look up his name and Death with Dignity, and the YouTube video should come up. It's really very moving. So he elected to drink his medicine on his 50th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
He invited his family and friends to come and celebrate his birthday with him.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. He decided that he wanted laughter, he wanted pizza, and he wanted beer. He was really so inspiring. He was telling jokes, putting people at ease. It was an amazing celebration of his life. He said, "I'm the only person I know that gets to attend my own celebration of life. And I want it to be full of my family. I want it to be full of love." Certainly there were tears, but there was also joy. I was so honored. I felt an atmosphere of reverence, respect for this person's choice. And he had a strong belief in um, his own view of the afterlife.
Mm.
I was with him when he drank his medicine, and again, as I said before, it's a liquid. It does not taste good. He had a straw, and I'm just relating these details because someone may be listening that is very interested in those details. And I think the straw helped him to just be able to swallow. I gave a blessing, and because he was Norwegian, I read from the rune book, Norwegian Viking runes, and he had runes tattooed. I didn't know this before I went, but he had tattoos on his upper arms. Were usually covered by a shirt, but he had um, a sleeveless shirt and on his legs as well. So it felt like a good choice.
Mm.
I wanted to honor his family as well, and I met several times after his passing with his partner. We got to know each other, and I communicated with his daughters and with his sister. I thought that this was really such a dignified way to go.
Mm.
It was my first experience with directly with Death with Dignity, and I had previously been involved in um, helping the bill to get passed by encouraging people to sign a petition. But this was a direct experience, so it was very different. It was very emotional, and I felt even more committed to the ease of suffering.
Mm.
To me, that's the centerpiece of this bill. It eases suffering. And I think not only for the person with the terminal disease, I, I heard from the family that they took comfort that he was not going to go through the ravages of
Mm.
brain cancer. So that was very profound for me.
Mm.
And I felt very honored to be included with the family and friends at his own celebration of life. The second time that I encountered Death with Dignity on a very personal level was with another long-term client. This lady was amazing. She had been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer,
Mm.
and she had it for 17 years,
Yeah.
which is almost unheard of. Most people do not live that long. And during the course of her Reiki sessions with me, she often brought up that she didn't want her suffering to be prolonged.
Mm.
And I said, well, I'll call her Jane. Well, Jane, you've been through so much. What to you is too much suffering? And she said, I'll know when I'm there, and
Mm.
I'll let you know. And I trusted her with that. She had at least 3 different times that doctors said to her, get your affairs in order, there's nothing more that we can do.
Mhm.
She said, I am not ready. I'm not ready to go. She wanted to see her children launched into their own individual lives. And she had one daughter at the time that was still in high school.
Mm.
She definitely wanted to continue to be her mom, and she did in the most incredibly courageous way. She she did everything that she could with medical care, and she added a home gym in her basement to build up her muscles to be able to continue to receive injections in her muscles for help with the disease. She tried every different kind of additional support and complementary therapies, and she was a regular receiver of Reiki. There came a time when the doctors said one more time, Jane, there's nothing more that we can do. She was put on pain control, which is a little button you can push, and it dispenses morphine into your system. And it's timed so that she won't get too much.
Right.
And that was very helpful for her. It had some limits. And as she approached those limits, she realized, my children are launched. My pain is great. I'm ready. She had done all of that previous work that I described. Her palliative care doctor. Her palliative care doctor was very supportive of her making her own decision. She did. So one afternoon, she called me, and she lived about a half an hour away. And she said, Martha, guess what? Tonight's the night. And I knew exactly what she meant. I said, I'll be there in half an hour. So we had talked previously, and she had told me that she wanted me to be there. So there was my client, her husband, her daughter, and myself. She called all of the people that she was close to in her family, either on FaceTime, I think it was FaceTime, said her goodbyes. She was so brave, and she was in a lot of pain. It was a very moving thing to see. So the time approached, and she had the medicine. She questioned her doctor about the procedure, and she felt calm, that she knew what to do. Her husband and her daughter were by her side. She chose to recline in a comfortable chair. And I knew that, as the doctor explained to us, that she would go into a coma at first. It would be an unknown amount of time before she passed. And I knew that my job was to support her, but also to support her family members. And her husband and her daughter were, again, both very supportive of her choice, but it was very hard for them. We were gathered around her as she drank her medicine and went into a coma. We sat together and breathed with her quite a long time. I looked at her, and I got a feeling that I should say a little poem. I just kind of relied on my intuition, and I said this very short poem that was just appearing in my head. And then a little while after that, I had another intuition, and I said, Jane, it's okay. You can go whenever it's right for you. She took one more breath and died. People in comas can hear. Didn't realize how well they can hear. It astonished me that perhaps she was waiting for that. I've heard from other people, and I've been in other hospice situations where family members said, we'll be okay. It's all right, Dad.
Yeah.
It's right. You can go. Well, this was really living proof to me that permission is important. And I was glad I had that intuition to say, it's okay. You can go when you're ready. So that is, those are my two stories of how went for the two people that I was supporting through hospice. I think Death with Dignity was right for them. Even if I didn't think it was right, they felt it was right. And here's sometimes a difficult point is that sometimes it can be right for a person and it can feel wrong for their family. There's a difference in beliefs. Maybe there's an unwillingness to let go of that person.
Mm.
This takes a lot of spiritual and emotional work to come into alignment and to honor the person. They're the ones that are owning their bodies. They're the ones that are in pain. I think of it as a very personal thing, but I do feel that we are in charge of our bodies, belong to us. So this is my own personal belief. I'm not asking our listeners and watchers to agree with me, but that's where I'm coming from. So I felt able to support these two people with all of my heart and all of my belief, and I was very, very relieved that their families were completely aligned with them. What a gift. So I would like to invite any, I don't know, comments or questions that you have, Sarah. Perhaps you're anticipating some of what our watchers might be thinking or feeling.
I don't know that I have questions so much as the observation of when we began talking about the possibility of having this conversation, and even today, as you've been sharing, that space of the Native Americans, the stories of the old ones giving the blessing and then going off alone, right? Having that space in order to be able to. And so I really do think that culturally, there are different cultural expectations. Some cultures are going to say, we're not going to talk about this at all. And other cultures are going to be much more of understanding that death is a part of living. And you talked about this earlier in this conversation about how we shy away from this conversation. And the image that came to mind for me was, the billboards that show us we're supposed to be young and strong all of our lives.
Wow.
I think that young and strong isn't necessarily in our body. I think that young and strong becomes our spirit. Our spirit becomes young and strong and stronger and carries with it the wisdom that we've learned. And so, so for those who are still listening in, I think it's important to look at your own culture, to look at your own family beliefs, which may be very, very different than the culture that you live in. And I know that I've had some people whisper to me conversations about this in the last 2 or 3 years. Not that anyone that I know is anticipating this, but that they are having these conversations and listening into other people having conversations about how our countries, how our states handling this. You mentioned ALS earlier, and you have to be able to self-medicate when you make that decision.
Right.
And so there comes a point that for some people, they are so far in their disease that they no longer are able to self-medicate. But other countries, America doesn't allow, but other countries do. And so then what do you do? And so I think that I think it's a conversation that's worth us opening up from a space of knowing that, in my belief, we are spirit beings having a human experience. If we are going back to spirit, can we have this conversation not to say do it or don't do it, or support or don't support, but a space of information? Are we allowed to have a place where we can hear about something that maybe have some opposition in terms of how we've been raised or our belief system, and yet be able to listen to it and understand that having this knowledge allows us a deeper space into other conversations in the future. And I think that's such an important place for us to be. I know that for myself, somebody was talking about how could they possibly talk to their kids about a pretty messy political thing? And the kids were on a very different place than this particular mom was. And I said, just my own experience, I know that I have been on different places in my belief system about the death penalty. And so if as we learn or hear more or get more information or live more life that we're able to change and switch, can't we also have these conversations about other things, politics, for example? And we don't talk about politics on the show very, very specifically because it can be such a flashpoint of division. And the show is about opening hearts, opening minds, and gifting energetic tools.
Yes.
And so, but that space also of in our lifetime, can we each look back at our life and go, oh, I believed this at one point, but yet now I have a different understanding or a different, maybe not agreement with, but a different understanding of. So with that, Martha, I would love to dovetail into the conversation that we had in our last conversation about traumatic brain injuries and life afterwards. And if you're okay with us dovetailing into that for a few minutes. I recently had a conversation with somebody who had a massive concussion and was able to interview her. And after we turned off the interview, I began to share about some things that in my larger family we've been having conversations about. And so this is not going to be true for everybody who's had a concussion. This is not going to be necessarily everybody's story. But I think that if people who are listening in have people in their life that have had a traumatic brain injury, begin to look at some of the other pieces around of how finances are handled or not handled, how medication is handled or not handled, how taking out the trash is handled or not handled. This is not a space of at all of any kind of condemnation. It's a place of actually opening up. That for my family, when we began to realize that some of the things that we were seeing were actually as a result of a very terrific accident that caused a huge concussion that lasted, the person was in a coma for days. It has begun to help us understand how to better support rather than condemn. And so, having shared that caveat, I would love for you to share in your own experiences, friend, what have been some things that have been very, very helpful for you in your own story, in your own experience of having had this massive accident when you were in college, a top student, coming into a place of seeing that your life was so different, finding Reiki, having Reiki really be able to open up radical, amazing healing doors for you. I would just love for you to speak, perhaps in your own watching of other people, of some of the things that would be helpful for the audience to talk about or recognize that you have seen in other people who've had very difficult concussions or traumatic brain injuries.
Oh, I would just love to address that. It's a topic very dear to my heart. I've lived with traumatic brain injury of my own, as you said, since 2019. And over the course of my life, my attitude towards my own brain injury has changed very radically. For many years, I didn't realize that I had a brain injury. I was not diagnosed. I was told that I had a skull fracture. And yeah, so there was no awareness to start with. I was really assuming that something had happened to my personality, and I was not self-reflective. Self-reflection is something that often disappears when a person is brain injured, and an amazing degree. So I somehow decided, well, Martha, you used to be a smart person, but now you're stupid. And it was very debilitating to me to self-identify as a person that just did not have much intelligence. I got a big opening with Reiki, and there was so much healing that happened with Reiki, meditation, and yoga. I encountered other realms where healing could happen. I still had a misunderstanding. That misunderstanding finally went away completely at fairly recently. I went to have a neuropsych evaluation. Now, I'd been trying to have one of those ever since I kind of put it together. You had a brain injury in addition to that skull fracture.
Right.
You got some help with that, but my insurance wouldn't cover a neuropsych eval. It was very expensive. I couldn't afford it. So, long story short, I finally had a neuropsych evaluation in 2014. My injury happened in 1976.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Very long time. Yes.
I had a wonderful neuropsychologist who gave my results to me, and there was a lot of very exhausting testing. So when I went to see him, he said, Martha, we're going to talk about all of the results of your testing, and I think you'll see something that perhaps you haven't seen before, because we had talked previously, and he got a kind of a picture of what my life was like. A lot of frustration, a lot of short-term memory loss, and still some executive function discrepancy where I couldn't really plan first this, then this, then this. And in spite of all of that, I had a very successful Reiki practice. So these two things happened along at the same time. But the realization from my visit with him was quite profound. He said, you have a very smart brain, and that hasn't been affected by your brain injury at all. What's been affected is your memory. And these two co-occurring pathways in your brain have some places where they intersect, but many places where they don't. My guess is that you can read a book of philosophy at night, get up in the morning, and lose your way in the small city of Brunswick, Maine, when you're trying to negotiate how to get to the place you're going. And I said, you're exactly right. And he said, well, that's because there's this level where your brain injury is, and there's this level where your IQ is. And that place in between that you can see and I can see between these two hands, that's your frustration in this life. And I started crying. I was so struck by what a good explanation that no one else had given me.
Wow.
Extreme frustration. And yet I was using the tools and getting more tools. But his way of describing brain injury as not touching my intelligence, but touching the inconveniences of life, the order of how things should happen. Sometimes my my lacking sense of direction was really profound, and yet none of that touched my intelligence, and I was so grateful to him. So I would like to speak to other people who may be watching this and may have had a concussion. Maybe they don't know that they have had a concussion. Maybe they fell out of their bicycle and were kind of out for a few minutes, and then life went on. If you're noticing that things aren't the same, talk to your doctor. It is so important to get as much information as you can and use that information to help yourself get over the small things that are disruptive, because those small things can erode your sense of self-esteem. For me, it was glitches in memory, problems with direction. Time management was really quite damaged. I had to write everything down that was going to happen and consult that little notebook. I still do that to this day. And to set alarms on my phone to help each time. A doctor, particularly a neuropsychologist, can help with all of these things. And it's so important to recognize that our lives may be negatively affected and we may not realize the extent because we're trying so hard to hold it together. This is exhausting.
Yeah.
It's so exhausting to hold it together day after day. And sometimes our emotions explode. People with brain injuries can be extremely emotional at inappropriate times. I think that this might be, I'm not a neuropsychologist, but from my own experience, I get overwhelmed and I don't know where my emotion can be discharged in a safe way.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this goes back to your question. I've forgotten.
It does. You answered so beautifully. And thank you for allowing me to move the conversation to this area, because after I finished the recording, I walked away thinking this is such an important, deeper conversation for what my family's understanding in the wider, broader group, right? But also, I think that it's something that if you have somebody who was pretty even-tempered before and now has these flash pans of just lightning anger,
Yes.
look for concussions, look for, and then to not be asking open-ended questions, but to ask specific questions. I'm learning this.
Yes.
Is to ask just the one thing I want to know, not how are you doing? That's just overwhelming. But, did you sleep well last night? How was your breakfast? Those kinds of questions that are so much more manageable. And I think also lead to, if the person's willing to talk in any conversation, whether they've had a concussion or not, it leads to the opening then of being able to possibly ask another question, or for them to ask you a question. And now you have a dialogue. But when we ask these massive open-ended questions, it becomes really hard to navigate. There can be a lot of overwhelm with that, trying to answer that question. So I really deeply appreciate, Martha, you and your journey and your willingness to share. It's just a delight to be with you, Martha. Thank you.
It's a delight to be with you, Sarah, and I'm very sad for the experience that your family members have had with brain injury. Concussion it's a strange diagnosis because it's hidden in
Yes.
many ways, and people tend to instead of being curious, people tend to be judgmental. And that's really not a place that is helpful for that person.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
This is a perfect place for us to put a bow tie on this particular conversation, friend, that space of choosing to not be judgmental. Thank you so much, Martha. And if there are other conversations, we just may have you back again for us to have another wider, deeper conversation. It's just such a beautiful thing to be in your presence, Martha. Thank you.
I really have enjoyed talking with you, Sarah. I'd be delighted to come back sometime. And
Beautiful.
I love that you make this space available. It's a beautiful space of opening to spirit. And I think the more that we can do that, the more peace we'll have in our hearts.
I love that. Thank you, audience, for being here. We are so grateful for you. We've been looking at the numbers recently. It's not something that I enjoy doing because I believe that spirit grows things as spirit wants. And as we are being obedient, as I'm being obedient, that all of the right things are happening. But one of the things I will share with you is that in a 56-minute show, typically people will watch maybe about 30 minutes, and you as an audience listen way over the 40-minute mark. And we're just so grateful that you are finding good in this content, and feel free to share with other people as well. And as we say at the end of every single show, take good care of you. We are so grateful for you. Until next time.